What's up, everybody? I want to talk about Mamdani again because it's making the news. Obviously, it's 24 hours coverage, and that happens for a reason. But that aside, I did a video where I kind of mentioned him yesterday, and I wanted to expand on that because some people are kind of mad at me online or maybe offended because they feel like maybe I was putting them down for complaining or posting about Mamdani winning. But I said something like, isn't it amazing that so many Americans who hate New York City, never plan on going, are so up in arms about a mayor being elected there, okay? And people are bringing up all these reasons why they are upset or whatever, and understandably so. But I want to put out there what I think may be happening, because I try to look at everything in a bigger view, the big picture. I don't think there's any real communists or socialists out there with any major power. And I say that because, there was the Frank Zappa quote. He said that communism doesn't work because people like to own stuff. And the political communists of today wear tailored suits and have iPhones and all this stuff. So I don't think there's any real communists and socialists, but I think that the powers that shouldn't be are more than happy to use those labels and use the threat of socialism and communism to control people. They get a certain amount of people on their side, but they also gain from making the other side reactionary. And that is very, very important. Also, I want to say that I don't believe for a second that the moneyed powers that are in New York City, that place, the money that comes through there, the money that's involved, the deals that are made, there's no way they would allow somebody to get the mayorship if he actually stood in their way of financial gain. These powers can prevent presidential hopefuls from winning. They can derail a campaign like they did Ron Paul or even Bernie Sanders if they stand to be in the way of their making money and their power and their influence. But it means a lot to the powers that shouldn't be to have a guy who's very divisive. You think about it like this. There's nobody that's really stood up in the Democratic Party to give Trump a run for his money. Nobody. Gavin Newsom, not a chance. AOC, not a chance, even though Republicans do love to hate those people, and that is valuable to the powers behind policy as well. But this Mamdani guy, being a Muslim and a socialist, now remember, he just met with some Orthodox Jews just a couple of days ago. So obviously he's not a radical Muslim, but if they can portray him as such, because people on the right loathe Muslims and they loathe socialists, okay? And those terms are scare terms. They're used as scare tactics against the conservatives and the libertarians, okay? And that, sometimes the things that we are in fear of and that we hate, they can be used against us to control us, and we don't understand because we're all so emotional and reactionary and tribalistic. And so Mamdani having that seat of power probably is more valuable to these moneyed men than having a straight up capitalist in there. Even though I don't really believe, again, that capitalists really exist in major positions of power. It's all cronyism. Capitalism is, each person has the same opportunity, but that's not what our system is about at all. They try to sell that to us. They try to sell that to us and push this Americanism, this religion of America, and that everybody has an equal opportunity. And if you, by the sweat of your brow, you see some guy like Rockefeller or, Elon or whoever, if you work hard enough, you can be one of them, because this is the land of the free and the home of the brave, and we all have a chance. And they leave out all the cronyism. It's all, just this small group of people that are allowed to thrive. But they got to keep that dream alive so average people will think that they can be a part of it, And once they actually see it, a lot of small business owners understand and realize pretty quickly that They don't stand a chance with the cronyist. It's like a gang. It's like a mafia at the top, And it's even like that on smaller levels in big cities. I mean, New York, come on, dude. Mafia. I mean, the mafia never really went away. They put on suits and ties, they ran for office. So we got to understand kind of what's going on there. And just think about things from a propaganda point of view, a psychological warfare point of view. With Mamdani in place, he can pose a threat or perceived threat. And that perceived threat, I talk about propaganda in your own camp a lot of times is more, I'd say, more dangerous than the propaganda coming out of the opposition because it controls you. And that's what they can do with having Mamdani in place. They can control people, make them think that the Muslims and socialists are to blame for everything instead of really who is actually to blame, because he's going to forward what we're doing and our greatest allies doing in the Middle East too, because they will blame everything on Muslims no matter what happens, even though he's probably not a radical Muslim at all, if they perceive him as one, or they will perceive him as one, because they perceived Obama as a radical Muslim, even though he was getting presidential awards from the president of Israel. It doesn't matter. It's how the information is handed to them by conservative media. And conservative media is loyal to the money men. I talk about this on my show all the time, but back in the day when I listened to all the right-wing talk radio, all the conservative talk radio, Limbaugh and Hannity and all the rest, I mean, and they do this to all their audience. It was almost like rich people couldn't do any wrong, And if you criticize some rich guy, you were a communist or a socialist, And that's the way they kind of pushed it until Trump came around and people started seeing BlackRock and Larry Fink and all these people connected to WEF and those kinds of things. And they started seeing these companies that were pushing the COVID agenda. And that's when people started to wake up, and conservative media finally had to jump on there and start putting down some of these guys and some of these companies and corporations. But before that, you were taught to just trust these big corporations blindly and think they're always on your side. And I remember when I was coming out of the left-right paradigm, reading, I guess you'd say, revisionist history books or real history, the history that wasn't written by the winners, and you would see how Rockefeller and all these different people, the Warburgs and the Harrimans, and you could go on and on, the Rothschilds, how they had controlled things and bought off politicians and created monopolies and all those kinds of things. And that started waking me up to like, oh man, I have been totally fooled by conservative media. No wonder they won't talk about the Federal Reserve. No wonder they won't talk about the Council on Foreign Relations. No wonder they blindly support the military-industrial complex. It's all about money at the end of the day, and that's who they're loyal to, is the money men, just like our politicians are loyal to the money men. So I just want to get that out there, people. Think about things in a kind of different way. I could be wrong about all this, and I'm totally willing to be wrong, and I'll admit it if I am, but I want people to kind of think about it, at least think about things in a different way, because you see the mainstream media just covering this Mamdani guy, both the left and the right, and you have to start to wonder what the real agenda is. Anyway, thanks for listening to me. I hope you understood what I'm talking about. I hope I didn't ramble too much. Cheers and blessings, guys. And remember that their order is not our order. See ya.